Last night did not just focus on President Obama or the economy. Listen to this exchange when Rick Santorum and Congressman Ron Paul mixed it up over Iran.
Here we are, building this case out, please. They're building up this case just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
Republican presidential candidate and Texas Congressman Ron Paul joins us now. Congressman, I want to read you a quote from Charlie Cook, the noted author of the Cook Political Report. He writes about you in the National Journal today. Perhaps only Ron Paul had no need to prove anything. He has always marched to the beat of his own drum and runs a campaign more about promoting his libertarian views than winning the White House. How do you respond?
Well, I think it's a pretty good position because I think you should go for the person who has principles and believe in them. If you noticed last night, most of the other candidates were all challenged for their flip-flopping, and rightfully so. They should be challenged. But I was never given a question about flip-flopping because they know where I stand. But it is true, if you're a philosophic candidate, it could be just philosophy. But it just happens that the philosophy of this country is shifting. It's shifting in the direction of the Constitution, limited government, a foreign policy that is different, balancing our budget, having sound money. So I would say it's coming together. The philosophy is coming together with a political change. And we've talked about this even 4 years ago. It was coined as a revolution. And it is an intellectual revolution, and I'm proud to be very much a part of it.
Our viewers ask better questions than I do, so let me get right to some of them. Talking about where you stand, Don Peterson in Hemet, California wants to know, where does Mr. Paul stand on Israel? He seems to have dodged the question every time he's been asked.
I disagree with him because I don't. We should be friends with Israel, and I don't think we do a very good job at it. But I don't think giving money to our friends is the right thing to do. I'm against all foreign aid. And if we cut out all the foreign aid today, we would cut out 7 times more foreign aid from the enemies of Israel, but I wouldn't give foreign aid to Israel. I want Israel to have their own national sovereignty. I don't want them to depend on us either for the money, which socializes their economy, and they're in financial trouble as well. And I don't want them to depend on us to tell them how to draw up their peace treaties or what to do with their borders. So yes, we should have friendship with them, we should trade with them, but total dependence on the United States and on our money is a bad risk for them because we're in bankruptcy, we're not going to be there forever, we are going to come home, and I think that their dependency on us is very, very harmful to them.
This question comes from John in Amana, Iowa, and it relates to that argument that you got into with Senator Santorum. When Iran has a nuclear weapon, he asks, and attacks Israel with it, how will President Paul respond?
Well, Israel has 300 of them, so do you think Iran is going to attack them with a weapon they don't have? And our own CIA says there's no concrete evidence that they're actually building on it. So we are going to turn the world upside down and attack Iran because someday they might have a nuclear weapon. And yet our leaders talk to the Chinese as well as the Soviets when they had thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons. I don't think it makes any sense to take on Iran and fight them, and that's essentially what some people want to do, is say that we have to have another war. Even Robert Gates, getting out of the position of Secretary of Defense, is saying anybody who thinks we need another war needs their head examined. And that's the way I feel about it. But the Iranians are a third world nation. They don't have an army or a navy of any sort. They don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles. And a country that has all that oil in their country, and they can't even produce enough gasoline, and they have to depend on importing gasoline, and we're supposed to build up war fever and go to war over this? I don't think for a minute that if they got those weapons, they wouldn't dare thinking about attacking Israel. Israel would take care of them, especially if they had no restraints from us. They would take care of them in minutes. It's not going to happen. It's all war propaganda.
All right. On that topic, a writer named Political Tool says, here's a question for Ron Paul. Does he really believe letting Iran develop a nuke is okay? His isolationist ideas are fantasy. Your response?
I'm not an isolationist. I'm a free trader. The isolationists are the ones that won't even trade with Cuba. And they're the ones who want to put on sanctions. They want to isolate these countries and always use sanctions. So I think that's wrong. Our founders advised us that we trade with people and be friends with as many as are willing to accept our friendship. And we're doing the opposite. We get involved in these entangling alliances. We go to war under NATO and the United Nations. And like I said, what do there's nuclear weapons all over the place over there. If you were an Iranian, I'm sure you would say, well, it's not in our best interest. We ought to gain some respect, because if we have a weapon, maybe they might not attack us. But the weapons, they are surrounded by nuclear weapons. Israel, India, Pakistan, China, the United States, Russia, they all have these nuclear weapons, and they barely think about it. When they try to enrich for peaceful purposes, they get condemned for it. So yes, there's a lot of bad people over there. There's a lot of violent people around the world. But believe me, the Iranians don't have a tradition of sending troops and invading countries 6,000 miles from their shore and occupying another country. Matter of fact, they're pretty respectful of their borders. And the wars they got into in the 1980s was because we instigated the Iraqis to go into Iran. So
Congressman,
I would say a good assessment of that would give you a better appreciation.
You have time for a
position.
couple more questions. We'll be right back. Back with us now, Republican presidential candidate and Texas Congressman Ron Paul, who's been good enough to stick with us through that commercial break for a couple of more questions. Governor Rick Perry of Texas says he's done the kinds of things that you advocate doing, getting government out of people's way, and he says that's part of the reason that Texas has added so many jobs. What do you think of his entry into the race, and what do you think of his record?
Well, his record, when you dig into it, it's more questionable than most people realize. But somebody else is going to do that after he enters into the race. But his getting into the race, I think, doesn't bother me at all, obviously, because he pretty much represents the status quo, and the other candidates, in one way or another, are part of the status quo, and I represent something quite different. I represent the faction that emphasizes personal liberty and non-interventionist foreign policy, getting rid of the Fed. The rest aren't quite in that area. So he comes in and he dilutes that vote. So yes, he'll pick up a lot of votes. But I doubt very much if he's going to pick up any of the Ron Paul votes.
Talking about the Fed, Shayla Kaufman wants to know, how would our currency be controlled if not by the Federal Reserve?
Well, like it was before the Federal Reserve, and they did a reasonably good job, even though they abused the gold standard all the time. You don't need government to control the money supply. The money supply is controlled by the people, and it's controlled by the banks. It is not controlled by somebody at a computer who decides this week we need $5 billion this week, put it into it. But during the crisis, they pumped in $15 trillion and manipulated that and gave it to foreign central banks. There is a monstrous amount of damage that's done by a Federal Reserve. They create the financial bubbles, and therefore they create the inevitable recessions and depressions, and they cause the inflation and the unemployment rate. So that is what you have to endorse if you endorse the central bank. The Constitution doesn't give the authority for a central bank. The Constitution still says that only gold and silver can be legal tender. So when Mr. Bernanke tells me that gold is not money, he needs to be asked, and when I get a better chance to do it, I'm going to ask him, well, how does he have the right to amend the Constitution? Because the Constitution has not been amended.
Obviously.
So up until 1913, you did not have a central bank, and we did quite well.
The economy is in a mess right now. William Ridenour of Duncanville, Texas, wants to know what needs to be done to restore it to health. What should be done first? What would be your first act?
Well, there's a lot of first things done, but there's no magic thing. The most important thing that has to be done is to get people to understand the necessity of liquidation of debt. Because you can't get growth if you have a pile of debt. So we're living with debt and we're expanding debt. So that means that we have to reverse the philosophy that you bail out debt, bail out banks, bail out corporations, and dump all the bad assets on the consumer and on the taxpayer. So that's the most important thing. But there's a lot of other things you have to do. You have to save a lot of money. You cannot continue fighting these trillions of dollars of wars around the world. We have to change our foreign policy and bring our troops home, make sure they spend this money at home. You have to have a renewed monetary system and not have a weak currency. A strong currency invites capital into the country. A different tax code would invite capital into this country. We wouldn't chase our jobs overseas because we shouldn't have the fiat currency, the reserve currency of the world. That chases jobs off sea. But with a bad tax code and a regulatory code, you chase capital away and you chase jobs away, and the evidence is very obvious. For the last 30 years, that's what we've been doing, and that's why we're in this crisis, and all we've gotten for it is debt. That's why you have to address the subject of the central bank as well as free markets.
We know you have a lot of hands to shake there yet at the Iowa State Fair. Ron Paul, Congressman and presidential candidate, it's good to have you on. Thank you.